My older brother, like I said, is a French trained chef. We had a restaurant in Winston-Salem, and one of the things we did there is we had a dish on the menu, a teriyaki
Hmm.
with a marinade that he made, and very, very successful. So we use that and say that's our Japanese type of influence.
Okay.
My little brother is married to a woman that's Korean. Her mother-in-law is from Seoul. He has always Korean food around the house all the time. As a matter of fact, we do a dish that's his mother-in-law's recipe. So that comes our Korean influence.
Okay.
He has a sister-in-law that's from Laos. So if you look at that region of the country, or that region of the world, excuse me, Laos sits there, Thailand,
Uh-huh.
Vietnam, everything is kind of really close, and a lot of the cuisines are kind of intermingled.
Hmm.
So we do a Thai dish, we do a couple different Vietnamese dishes from family recipes.
Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. My guest today is a CRNA who has decided to venture into the ever-changing world of food trucks. Jimmy Kimball has been a healthcare professional for over 20 years, but before that, his family owned a few restaurants that he worked in every capacity imaginable. However, even with his extensive history in the food service industry, Jimmy has found opening a food truck to be a new challenge with a steep learning curve. Above all, though, Jimmy is most proud to be a veteran of the armed forces. It's great to have you here and to get the chance to catch up a bit. For those that don't know, Jimmy and I served alongside each other on our state association board. So we've been friends for many years and, but we've never really talked about this particular side venture. So I'm really excited to get into it. So Jimmy, welcome to the show today.
Well,
Good to
thanks
have you
for
here.
having me today, Bobby. I
Yeah.
appreciate being here.
Yeah, this should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to getting into it. So, let's start off with that experience in the food industry. Tell us a little bit about that.
I was pretty much born into restaurants. My parents, in some capacity, worked in restaurants since my dad was a young man. His mother owned a couple little diners, either in North Carolina or up in New Jersey, where he met my mother.
Okay.
Um, After we were born, I mean, mom and dad worked different jobs. Dad worked three jobs because there were five of us kids at one time. Sixth one came later after we had restaurants, but there were five of us. Dad worked for Pilot Freight Company here in Winston, worked a part-time job doing maintenance, and then my mom worked at a place in Winston called Sam's Gourmet. It was in the Thruway Shopping Center. It was probably mid to late 60s, 70s, really good, fine, upscale dining. My mom waited tables there, went to
Okay.
work for a restaurant on Stratford called Mr. Steak. It was a chain based out of Denver. She was waiting tables there. My dad, of course, working two jobs at the time,
Hmm.
to support the family, started the third job. He went to work at this Mr. Steak in Winston-Salem, got to be, cooking there, head cook. Um, Eventually, the guy that owned it wanted to make him a manager, became an assistant manager working at nights. And then they said, okay, let's look into franchise opportunities. So they did. They looked around and looked at, startup fees for a franchise. And the one that had the most potential, the easiest for them to get into, I mean, they were all about the same to buy into all over the US. We ended up in Flint, Michigan, of all places. They
Huh.
bought a chain of this in Flint. We ran that for From 1969, we bought into that restaurant, very successful. Opened another restaurant, used our last name Kimball's. It was fine upscale dining. Turned in the mid 70s, disco was popular, so we had a dance floor there, and it was like Kimball's Dining and Disco. And
Now, how old were you when this stuff was going on?
when it first started, I think I was 10 when we moved up to Michigan,
Okay.
and then we had the restaurant, and I can remember going in there, standing on a milk crate,
Yeah.
washing dishes. I
Oh
worked in the
man.
restaurant, I bussed tables. I didn't get into the front of the house that I did later on in kind of my restaurant career, work in the front of the house, but it was the back of the house,
Yeah.
dishwasher, bus tables, line cook, head cook on the Friday, Saturday night. We'd have two different things. The one that run the charbroil was usually the head cook. So I got to where on a Friday, Saturday night, I'd run a charbroil. And even going back in the 70s, we would do like $10,000 worth of business on a Friday or Saturday night,
Oh my
which is
goodness.
unreal. Have an hour waiting list all the time. So, needless to say, very, very, very successful restaurant. And then we did our own venue, very successful there. Had an uncle who was a chef that was a head chef there. I cooked a little bit there. Then I moved more into the front of the house, more got into, hosting, kind of a maitre d',
Yeah.
um, waited tables, bartended. It had a bar too, bartended, and then we opened, the nightclub part of it, and had some kid from England over there as a DJ, and I would go up there and pick his brains, and he turned out to be a royal pain and wouldn't show up on time for work and that. And so one night I just jumped up in the DJ booth and started DJing. So that's part
uh,
of my restaurant thing. Like I said, I've worked in every facet of a restaurant.
wow. Wow. So, obviously you did that for several years. When did you, I guess not go in that route? When did you decide this isn't quite where I want to be?
Okay, so always since I was a little kid, I wanted to do something in healthcare. Thought I wanted to be a physician. That was kind of my goal. Didn't want to go to college and become something in healthcare and decide I hated it. So was married at the time, went through a nasty divorce, was trying to find direction. 1980 in Flint, Michigan, General Motors packed up and left. So we closed our business up in Michigan, moved back to New Jersey with then my wife and kids. Worked in a couple different restaurants there. Managed one, it was a chain. Managed another one, it was a chain. Did front of the house in both of them. Went through a nasty divorce, needed direction. Said, why don't I just go back and see about doing something in healthcare? But like I say, I didn't want to go to college and find out I hated it. So I said, okay, I'll join the military. Became a medic in the military, loved it. Um, Worked at Fort Hood, was in an ambulance emergency room, ambulance section emergency room. There were five new of us came. It was half civilian, half military. Did an EMT class for all the five of us. So I became, working as a medic, working on the ambulance, became an EMT, then went to the community college and got my paramedic certification, worked as a paramedic. Got hurt in the military, got out, went back to college, got vocational rehabilitation, did a biology chemistry pre-med degree, took my MCATs and, got an MCAT review book, opened it up, looked at it and said, oh, I know all that. And then went and took the MCATs cold. And needless to say, I
Ooh.
bombed them. I bombed them. I still remember a question I got. It was a physics question. Say you have a barge that weighs like 250 tons, a 70-foot long chain hooking to a second barge that weighs 200 tons, being pulled by a tug going this many, kilometers per hour. What's the drag coefficient on the second barge? I had no clue even how to pump that formula in. So needless to say,
Yeah.
I'm the MCATs, except for I've always been very loquacious, very good at writing. So the written part of it, you had to write an essay. It scored like A through K. I scored a J on the written part, but scored only probably 19 on the MCAT out of a possible 45. So
Mm.
didn't take them again, being prior military at Winston-Salem State, ran into some military people, and they were all going from being medics. It was called a green to gold. You went as a medic, went in and got your BSN degree, and became a nurse and went back in as an officer. So didn't hear from med schools, got waitlisted a couple places, even with poor MCAT scores. I guess I did
Mhm.
well in a couple of interviews. Waitlisted, waiting to hear, and these military friends said, "Well, why don't you try this pre-nursing thing?" So that summer after I graduated my first degree 7 semesters, so I really worked hard. Um, that summer I did a
Yeah.
pre-nursing class and matriculated into the nursing department.
Very cool. Very
Worked
cool. And the rest is history from there.
4 years in an ICU, then as a CRNA.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, very
And
cool, man.
I digress in saying that my entire family was involved in the restaurants. I have five, si- five had 5 siblings. I have four now. One, his lifestyle killed him, but all
Mhm.
all of us worked in the restaurants. My older brother is a French trained executive chef. My sister worked there. My younger brother that passed away, he cooked. I cooked. I ran the front of the house. Both of my sisters worked there. So
Yeah.
really family businesses.
Yeah. So then, after you became a CRNA, obviously you make a good living doing that.
Yes, I do.
So what what made you turn back to the family business? What called you back to that? And specifically what called you to the opportunities that are available in food trucks?
Um, like I say, my older brother's a French trained executive chef, was working a couple restaurants. Chefs are very temperamental, um, almost like orthopedic surgeons or heart surgeons or neurosurgeons, very temperamental, very, it's all about me type thing. Got really mad at this restaurant, left, was driving a truck for a while, was driving a gas truck.
Oh,
Got together. I was living in Raleigh. My family's from Winston. My parents were living in a little place called Pine Hall, and we'd go to my mom and dad's every time for holidays, Easter, Christmas, and all that. So we all got together and we were talking about, man, we kind of miss the restaurant business. Well, let's look into getting a small restaurant. But then remembered back to the restaurant days, running a small business like that, you are married to it.
yep.
We're there from like 9 in the morning till midnight, 1, 2 o'clock, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It's hard getting time off. Talked about that, and then little brother, who's a very, very good cook, no, not formally trained, but just very good gourmet cook,
Mhm.
had said, "Ever think of a food truck?" And we're like, "Hmm." So this is Easter, I believe. Easter, we get together for 4th of July. We talked about it a little bit more. Said, let's start researching this. I forwarded you a couple links. I, did my due diligence, looked around on the internet about, food trucks, food trailers, startup and all of that, and kept talking about it and talking about it. And then there was this website called Used Vending. Looked on it. They had some used food trucks for sale. Went I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm sorry. I'll come back to that when we talk about startup costs.
Well,
So,
no, then that's fine. I mean,
yeah,
it's I think it's interesting, how all that kind of it just naturally seemed to happen. It was a kind of an organic process where you guys kind of got together, talked about it a little bit. Then I mean, I'm sure your brothers were doing some research as well at this time.
they're not quite as obsessive compulsive as I am. You know how being in healthcare, being a CRNA, most of us are very type A personalities, very
Yeah.
obsessive compulsive. That things need to be kind of regimented and all that. We need to do our due diligence. We need to research things. So I researched it a little bit more than they did. My little brother, he can be a little bit lax at times, so he probably did a little bit. My older brother was, wanting to get out of. He was driving a gasoline truck, working at night, driving a
Yeah.
bomb around, just hating it. And
Yeah.
fortunately, like you said, CRNAs make a good living, and I was in the, you know, point in my life that I could, do this.
Mhm.
So I basically bought a food truck for my brothers and myself.
Very
So we
cool.
looked at it, we did that. I looked at a couple things online, startups and all that.
Mhm.
There was a guy in Raleigh called like Jack of all trades that builds brand new food trucks.
Okay.
Went and looked at it and said, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's what we want to have on it. You know, the equipment we want to have on it. Look at it that he did a quote for me just to build the truck, the equipment on $100,000.
Oh,
To buy a used truck, you know, use like a UPS truck or anything and have him converted over, the truck was going to be 20 to 50,000.
yeah.
You know, for either a used one or buying a brand new one. I think it was a Chevrolet diesel, was about 52,000. So you're
Yeah.
looking at a pretty sizable startup.
Huh.
So
I mean, yeah, that's not small. Now, I mean, now obviously with you going with a used truck and stuff, you know, was that different for you? Did you actually end up going through that fella, or how did that work for you?
I got an estimate from him and I said, thank you so much. And, you know, did the thing looking online. You know, Google's a wonderful, powerful tool and probably the smartest friend I know, my friend Google.
Mhm.
And looked and found the place. It was called usevending.com. And it was people that had food trucks, either ran them or didn't. The one we found was built by a guy in Kernersville that took an old, and I've opened up a thing and I can see it. It was an old pretzel truck for delivering pretzels.
Okay.
And I know the history of it. Came from Baltimore, had a new engine with about 30,000 miles on it, but it had about 200,000 on the truck from, you know, all this running.
Okay.
Found that these people had bought it and never used it. Talking to them, they were like, well, yeah, we did this and then we changed our mind. And turns out I talked to the guy that built it. He said, oh, I built that truck. He came out and saw us one night and he said they just couldn't get it to pass inspection.
Oh,
Because that is another part of the logistics there. You may have a truck, you may want to set it up, you may want to go out on the road and do it,
yeah.
but you have to go through local health department inspections, just like any restaurant would.
Mhm.
And there were some things about it that it wouldn't pass in that county. You know, each county, there's 100 counties in North Carolina, and each one of them have different specifications of what they can do. 3 of the hardest are Wake County and Raleigh, Guilford County around Greensboro, and Forsyth County. So we
Great.
first started up with Stokes County because we could get it passed really kind of quickly.
Okay.
We had an interview with, you know, we had the girl from Forsyth County come look at the truck, and she wanted us to do all these modifications that would have been about 10,000.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you know, I just invested, you know, a dollar amount in the truck and didn't want to do that. So we got it to pass in Stokes County. Did a lot of the modifications, got it passed in Forsyth County, and moved. One of the other things you need to look at is you have to have a commercial kitchen. You can do prep all your food, but you can't do it on the truck. You have to have what's called a commissary.
Now you had, I mean, you bought this pretzel truck, so it didn't have. I
Oh
mean, it
no,
was just made with.
it was fitted.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
okay.
the guy in Kernersville took this pretzel truck
Okay.
and redid it. You look at some of the trucks that are used that go to food trucks. UPS trucks come a lot. Any type. I've seen some that have been like linen company delivery trucks.
Oh yeah.
Any type of I won't say a box van because it's bigger than a box van,
Mm-hmm.
but any type of truck like that, like a UPS truck for lack of better things.
Yeah.
Delivery, it's that they're converted and retrofitted to become food trucks.
Okay. So, and let's talk a little bit. You know, we're kind of getting into the startup costs here. So you've obviously got your permitting, your health, or your inspections and things like that. Your permitting. Do you have to have like a general permit to be in the city, or is it something where you have to have a permit for a location for a certain date? How does that work?
You get permitted in the county.
Okay.
We were permitted first in Stokes County, and then we switched it over to Forsyth County. Now, if you're talking about permits and like that, like we, you know, go outside Forsyth County, and you're kind of grandfathered in other counties, unless, say, if I went to Asheville, whatever county, I forget
That's
what
pretty.
county.
Yeah, that's a couple hours away. So
And say I was going to do a food truck like weekend, like a weekend rodeo, and would have to park my truck in that county for the weekend. I would have to get a temporary permit from that county saying that, okay, I'm leaving it there overnight
Okay.
and then going to
So
serve the next day.
how
So,
much are we talking with these permits? How much do they
um,
cost per year or
um,
per short stay?
for short stay, I think it's a $45-50 fee for
Okay,
just
so
a short
not
stay.
crazy.
It's not crazy, but being in this county and you're going by their health department, their health inspectors can come on your truck and look at your truck. And if they
Yeah.
don't like something on your truck, they could fail you and you've driven all the way there. And they could say, even though you pass in your county
hmm
and you get an inspection sticker, like if you go in a restaurant and you see the grade, like right now, I've got 99.5 on mine,
Okay.
an A
Yeah.
grade. You get
Yeah.
inspected like that. I have to have business permit. I had to get a tax ID from the federal government,
Yeah.
tax ID from the state government, um, business permit to run it. Each year, I have to renew permits through the state and cities.
hmm
So there's expense initial startup.
Okay.
I made my business an LLC.
hmm
So there was a startup finding an attorney to draw up all my articles of incorporation.
So that
You
can
can
be
do,
anywhere between what, 1,000 to a couple
usually
thousand
about 1,000.
dollars. Yeah.
And you can do, I know people that have, and I know for my anesthesia, for my locum stuff, I went through an attorney to do an LLC. For this, I think I did my LLC using LegalZoom,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
forget what the fee is. It can be done that way. For this, it's not quite as in depth to start a little business like that. So I
Yeah.
didn't feel I needed an attorney come in, and then I
Okay.
had to register with the state an application, you know, for my LLC, and
Yeah.
and then every year I think it's $120 to
Okay.
re-register my LLC.
Okay. So now let's talk about the the truck itself. You obviously had to come up with a concept of what you were going to sell and how that kind of fit into where you were going to be. You're in the middle of North Carolina. And what is the theme of your food truck?
It is called Pacific Rim Cuisine.
hmm
It is, as we say, a fresh Asian inspired menu.
Okay.
My older brother, like I said, is a French trained chef. We had a restaurant in Winston-Salem, and one of the things we did there is we had a dish on the menu, a teriyaki,
hmm
with a marinade that he made, and very, very successful. So we use that and say that's our Japanese type of influence.
Okay.
My little brother is married to a woman that's Korean. Her mother-in-law is from Seoul. He has always Korean food around the house all the time. As a matter of fact, we do a dish that's his mother-in-law's recipe. So that comes our Korean influence.
Okay.
He has a sister-in-law that's from Laos. So if you look at that region of the country, or that region of the world, excuse me, Laos sits there, Thailand,
Uh-huh.
Vietnam, everything is kind of really close, and a lot of the cuisines are kind of intermingled.
hmm
So we do a Thai dish, we do a couple different Vietnamese dishes from family recipes.
Very cool. Very cool. So you have a French trained chef cooking Asian food in the middle of North Carolina.
Yeah, but
I
if you
love
look at
it.
but if you look at Vietnamese, you look at Vietnamese cuisine that, Vietnamese was under French rule for so long, and you look at a lot of the
Very
Vietnamese
true.
language, and there is some Chinese, a little bit of Thai, and there's a lot of French influence in
hmm
Vietnamese language and cooking.
Yeah, there
I mean,
is. You're right. You're absolutely right. And
I mean,
uh
look at the names like a banh mi,
yeah,
is
yeah,
banh mi is a sandwich that's kind of a little French twist on it. It's on, a French baguette.
yeah.
A lot of Vietnamese just cooked in a lot of butter.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. So I
Yeah.
could talk food for a while, and I really I enjoy that part of it. But so let's talk. Get back to a little bit more of the business, though. So you
Okay.
guys decided on the route you were going to go
hmm
with your cuisine and everything else. What are the costs of keeping the food in the business? What are some of the margins that you're running? Where is it higher and lower in the certain foods? If if we can get into some of that.
Oh, certainly. Well, like I say, a good friend of ours, I'm going to digress a little bit too. A good friend of ours, of my little brother's, has a food truck in Wilmington. So I went to Wilmington too to pick his brain. And
Mhm.
one of the things he says is keep it simple. The KISS principle, keep it
Yep.
simple. He's a really good chef, and he would go prep for like 8 hours for a 2 hour service.
Oh wow.
He would do all kinds of things and change his menu all the time. And his suggestion was to keep it very simple. So we do like 3 different proteins. We have
Mhm.
chicken, beef, beef ribs.
Yep.
Although now we're doing some other things. We do a couple different fishes. We do a seared yellowfin tuna, and then we
Yeah.
do a poke bowl, but that's still 2 tunas, 2 of
Yep.
the same tuna, a yellowfin ahi tuna.
Yeah.
Um, keep it simple. We try to just like streamline everything because if you look in a restaurant, you have a vast kitchen, you have everything. On a food truck, you've got like an 8 by 12 area that you're cooking in. It's a little bigger
Yeah.
than that. The truck's about 20 something foot long, but
Okay.
where you cook, it's very compact. So you have to, fit everything in. If you have this vast menu that you're taking a whole bunch of different things, really run out of room. So we try to
Mhm.
keep it simple. By using 1 or 2 different proteins, the cost of it is not great that I'm not buying a whole lot of different ingredients.
Yeah. No, I
Um,
remember when the one time I worked in the food industry, I was in college and I uh, worked at a place called Maui Teriyaki. It's no longer there in Gainesville, Florida, but
mhm,
um, it was a place that they went by that principle, just keeping it simple.
mhm.
And you had your 3 different proteins, your beef, pork, and chicken, and you had rice, and you had kind of your basic vegetables, and it worked, and it was some delicious food. And although I will say a couple of the cooks I worked with, they were uh Asian themselves, and they would take the wok, and for their own lunches they'd make something completely different in the
Oh,
wok,
yeah.
and it was often just fantastic. So you never know what would come up there. But um no, this is great stuff, Jimmy. I really appreciate it. So the next thing I wanted to ask you about is how much time do you actually spend on this business? Because obviously, you're keeping things kind of simple. You're keeping the preparation simple. And we could talk a little bit more about margins too, because we didn't quite
Yeah.
get to that.
That's
But
a good point.
how much time are you spending on here too?
Well, personally, me, when I go, number one to say I am a good cook. I can cook. I do
Hmm.
not cook on the truck.
Okay.
We run ours a little bit different. A lot of time you go up to truck, you look in the window, somebody's cooking, turns around, takes your order.
Yeah.
We have set it up that I usually have 2 to 3 guys on the truck cooking. If I'm there, I'm outside and I take orders outside and I turn orders in, collect funds, expedite.
Okay.
Um, the guys that do the prep, like I employ 3 guys full time. I'm glad to say that I employ my 2 brothers, and then I've just hired another guy full time. So we're getting very busy, pretty successful that I can employ 3 people full time.
Cool.
Um, you have to have, like I say, that's another thing. You have to have a commercial commissary. So you have to either find a restaurant that will let you use part of their kitchen. We happen to use um, it's now the Truist Ball Field. We use one of their kitchens as our commercial commissary. You have to go there, we make our marinades fresh. We do a ground chicken dish. We grind chicken. We have a grinder that we have to grind chicken. We do Korean ribs. We have to prep them, marinate them. All our steaks and chickens we cut fresh. We cut our own steaks from big sides of beef. So
Yeah.
it has to marinate for 24 hours, and you can't do that on a truck.
Yeah.
We have vegetables to prep. We have all different types of preps. So the prep time, they're usually in there prepping 2 to 3 times a week, anywhere from a couple hours, or if we did a really big thing 3 weeks ago that they were in there, we were doing like 8 hour days prepping to get
Oh
ready.
yeah.
So they
Wow.
work full time. I of course work full time days healthcare. My time investment is, say we go out and do services. Services are anywhere from 2 hours to 5 hours. So I'm
Okay.
usually there for that time. I try to get there about 30 minutes before, and then when you close it down, I'm about 30 minutes after. We could go 7 days a week if we wanted to. We like to have time off, and I like to have a day off during the week. So try to keep it to we do maybe 3 to 5 services a week.
Okay.
So you figure, the prep for that service 4 to 5 hours a night, 4 times a week. So for me, 20 to 25 hours. For
Hmm.
them, some weeks it's, 20 to 30 hours. Some weeks it's 40 plus.
Okay.
So it just varies what we're doing, where we're doing it, how many times.
So are you guys a group that owns this truck, or is it you that owns the truck and they essentially are working for you?
I'm a sole proprietor
Okay. Okay,
or
cool.
sole entity. I own the
Okay.
truck. Um, I do that. I do a lot of the logistics. I do all the
Yeah.
accounting. Um, Matter of fact, when I'm off this call, I've got to go pay my sales and use tax for the month. So I need to
Oh yeah.
finish that up and pay that.
Okay.
I do all like licensing.
Yeah.
We go to certain places and they want like proof of insurance for
Hmm.
liabilities. So I, go through all the COIs, certificate of insurance to get that.
Hmm.
My little brother's very internet savvy, so he does all our marketing, plus he does all our booking. My older brother, is like I say, an executive chef, knows all the logistics of running the food side of it, so he does all the ordering.
Hmm.
They all do prepping, but he's kind of in charge with that. Plus, he also does all the maintenance on the truck. That's another thing you have with the truck. It's right now it's at the shop getting a new fuel pump put in. The fuel pump was going bad, so we're off today. They dropped it off early this morning. We have a service tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. We need to pick it up at 2.
Yeah.
So they're doing that.
I
They're
guess you
doing
don't want to have to tow the truck into your location. That's
no, and that was one thing I looked into. I looked in getting a trailer.
yeah.
Food trailer to start up is a whole lot less. But I knew in Raleigh they were going to, like, if you did a food truck radio downtown, they weren't letting people because you got to tow the trailer in, set it up, pull the vehicle away from it. So
Hmm.
Raleigh, they wanted to get in there, get it set up, have you pull out as soon as it was over. They didn't have time for you to, move all this around. So Raleigh was going away from trailers, and I thought about a trailer. It would have been easier, had a vehicle that we could have towed it with, but ended up going with the truck.
Okay. And then yeah, before I forget, the margins.
Margins, okay.
Yes.
I try to run, you're talking about like food cost and things like
Yeah,
that?
food costs
Okay.
and yeah.
Anytime, you try to do the rule of 30s.
Okay.
You want your labor to be about 30%, your food costs to be about 30%.
Okay.
And
Gotcha.
you have other incidentals. Um, I have to keep insurance on the vehicle just like car insurance.
Hmm.
I have to have insurance on that. I have to have liability in case, something would happen. Somebody falls outside, just like at a
Yeah.
restaurant. You walk in a restaurant, you trip. You go to the grocery store, you trip and fall. They have to have liabilities. I
Yeah.
also have to carry workman's compensation insurance for my guys. So
Hmm.
that's 3 different types of insurances that I have to carry for that. That
Yeah.
goes into it. Business license every year.
Yeah.
You have to have a commercial commissary. Rents from commissary or anywhere from, at the low end, probably 200 a month to, I've know people that are paying $1,000 a month for a commissary,
Cool.
which is something I've also thought about branching into. There are no just buildings that are commissaries in Forsyth County. There's a couple in Wake County. Like I know a guy that just owns a building, and all he does is he leases it to 8 different food trucks.
Yeah.
And I've thought about maybe down the road that I'm going to buy an old restaurant and convert it, because there's already walk-in cooler there. There's already preparatory space, or having a building built and putting a couple different freezers and refrigerators and prep stations and
Yeah.
all type of apparatus to cook up, and have a commissary and charge people rent for it, and do that as a secondary income stream.
Yeah. No, this is such great stuff, Jimmy.
Mhm.
I really appreciate you sharing all of this. And what I want to do at this point, we're kind of running out of time. I want to
Right,
give people.
Just
Oh,
say
go
there,
ahead. Go
where
ahead.
you're talking about margins, I'm
Yeah.
happy to say the first year of business, we started January 1st, 2019, and it's unheard of really to break even on your first year. So I broke even the first year. 2020 was looking like it was going to go gangbusters, and then a little thing called COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had to shut it down from March to just right after Halloween. And this
Okay.
year, I could work 7 days a week, twice a day if I want. It's really going well this year, and I will probably turn a profit and be able to. I don't pay myself a salary because
Mhm.
I put everything back in the business, and I have not recouped my initial investment for buying the truck and all the startup fees. I
Yeah.
still haven't recouped myself that.
Yeah. Okay. And that's understandable that it's taking some extra time given the pandemic we just went through. So, unfortunately that's wrecked a lot of businesses. So it's actually I mean, it goes
It
to
is a
the,
blessing that I'm still in business.
yeah, because there are several food trucks and a lot of restaurants that have shut down during this time. So, I mean, it's really fortunate. And I think that stands to, you know, what what you've actually built with this food truck and the business that you've created and how good you guys are, as a team. So kudos to you, man. This is awesome.
Oh, very good.
So, well, hey, I'm sure a lot of folks have a lot more questions than we've been able to touch on. How can folks reach out to you and get a hold of you?
Um, Email, or actually, we have Instagram or Facebook pages.
Okay.
Facebook, it's Pacific Rim Food Truck
Mm-hmm.
on
Okay.
Facebook. Instagram is Pacific Rim _truck. They
Okay.
can come on there and direct message. Email for me is Kicksave, KICKSAVE 30, and I'm going to hate to say this, at AOL.com.
You're not
I,
the first one I've had on who had an AOL address, so don't
I
feel
got
bad.
it. I got out of the Army in 1990 and started going back to school. And I'm an old goalie, so kick save is a hockey term. 30 was my number. I got in, my first email was AOL, kick save 30. I've had that since 1990. I've never had a problem with it, with AOL as people used to call it. I've never had a problem with it, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, I've got Gmail accounts, I've got some
Yeah.
Hotmail accounts, but this has been my go-to forever.
Sweet, man. Well, that's awesome. And I'll have links to all of the contact information and some of those links that you sent me as well to help people get started with this kind of a business and at least do some of that research on their own and figure out what it looks like for them. But you've given listeners quite a bit to chew on here today. Yeah, that was a really bad joke. I've actually been waiting the whole conversation to say that.
Probably. I know you. And
Yeah.
I can say, I get behind our product. I'm not just saying it's because it's mine, but the food is really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I eat it every time I'm there. The food is amazing. It's authentic. It's fresh. Went with the food truck. I'll even digress a little bit more. I've used the word digress too many times in this conversation, but reason we went with the food truck is, the restaurant you're married with, you're married to it. You're there all the time.
Mm-hmm.
My niece is getting married in August, so we're closing the food truck. We couldn't do that with the restaurant. We're all doing that, going up to New Jersey. My niece is getting married. We're all going to see that. With a restaurant, we couldn't have done that. I mean, there's lots of things I missed growing up in a restaurant family that we couldn't go to because somebody had to be there to run the business. This way, we don't have to go out. That is probably the biggest allure of this.
Oh, that and that flexibility is just so amazing. That's what people are looking for in this day and age is a side business that gives them the flexibility to enjoy their life more on their own terms. So, man, that's awesome. Well, Jimmy, it's been wonderful having you here today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thanks for having me. And anybody out there interested in the food truck, reach out. If you're just interested in coming and eating on the food truck, the two links we gave, the Facebook and Instagram, we kind of post every week where we're going to be. And on that day, we'll say, hey, come join us tonight. Like tomorrow night, we're at a distillery. So
oh, very cool.
So much fun.
Yeah. Well, that sounds awesome. All right. Well, Hey, best of luck to you in the future, Jimmy, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Jimmy has seen and done so much in his different careers in the military, in healthcare, and in the restaurant business. And as long as I've known him, he's always been a teacher, willing to give his time and his knowledge to others to help them succeed. And he did the same thing today. He shared so many things that I'd never really even considered for this particular venture. I really appreciated Jimmy's honesty, though, on how he actually got started on his research into this business. He just Googled everything that he could. The internet is such an amazing resource, and there's information available on just about any type of business that you'd want to start up. He wanted to make this happen, though. And so he found ways around the different sticking points that popped up and was eventually able to turn his food truck dream into a reality. That's going to do it for us today. Thanks for listening to the Plan B CRNA podcast, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.